Yeah, I grew up in Unicoi County and went to school at Tennessee Tech University and got a degree in civil engineering. So I grew up on a farm, and my dad worked for the railroad, CSX, and we farmed on the side growing tobacco the whole time I grew up and did other farming kind of stuff. So I loved being outside, loved working outside. And then went to school at Temple Hill and was fortunate enough to have some really good teachers there that encouraged me in math, and really found out I had this connection for being outside and that I loved math. And I found this connection of this thing called civil engineering that I had never heard of. In fact, I remember when my 8th grade teacher told me that I may want to consider engineering, I thought it was a train conductor or something. That's kind of the way I found my passion into civil engineering. Mm-hmm. And I went to Tennessee Tech and got a degree in civil engineering, and then was able to get a local job here with a local engineering consulting firm for a while out of college. So I worked in Johnson City, and then I moved to South Carolina for an opportunity to work with the city of Greenville, South Carolina. So I've kind of course, grew up here with hard work and really having a lot of support from community, a lot of family. My mom is one of 11, my dad's one of 11, so I think I have 54 first cousins. So I've always had a lot of family support, grew up with strong family values.
So what was it like growing up there? Do you have any special memories? You talked a little bit about your farm and having such a big extended family.
Yeah, I think that, so the house that I grew up in off Mill Creek Road was 10 acres. And so we had a very big yard. And so within that yard we had what was considered at the time to be a real amenity was a paved basketball court. So it was half of a basketball court on the side of a barn with the goal on the side of the barn. So everybody, all my cousins, neighbors, came and played basketball. So it was the place that was just, to have an asphalt court was a big deal. We also had, with the big yard, we always had worn places where we played kickball. So the bases would have these worn out grass spaces between them. So when I grew up, it was a lot of hard work, but then it was also a lot of fun. So we had volleyball nets, we had, we always had cows. The one thing my dad would not have is chickens. That was the one thing that was totally off limits. But we always were trying something different. I remember being really amazed that my dad had the knowledge of like rotating crops. Like he would have a certain area that we would grow tobacco or grow a very big garden. And then within a couple years, we would let that set, and then we would move and do another. And I don't even know that science was out there or talked about, but he knew he could get a better harvest from letting the soil set for a while and replenish, and then growing it somewhere else. Fond memories of waking up in the middle of the night to chase cows that had gotten out of the fence and trying to herd them back in. I was very good at herding cows. Like people would call on me at a very young age to figure out where to put people to get the cows to go where they needed to go. And I always felt like I was very valuable in providing that resource. So for me, it was like this strategic thinking around how to make things happen on a farm. We also had a creek in front of our house that we would dam up to make a little place to swim. And then my grandfather would be like, "You're going to cause a flood," because it's going to back up. I remember the flood of 1977. So where I lived, it flooded an incredible area during that time. And I remember my dad waking us up and saying, "Look outside, you probably will never see anything like this again." And oddly enough, as a result, the civil engineering specialty that I went into was flooding, because I remember seeing how incredible water was and how dynamic it was, and how it did not care. It didn't know political lines. It didn't know individuals. It just did what it did in a very predictable way. And so I remember being fascinated at a very young age at what happened with water and with rushing water. But it was a very rich childhood, very full of family connections, big family gatherings, a lot of support. In any classroom I was in, I would have 2 or 3 cousins in the same classroom with me. So those are very fond memories that I have.
So you, right out of college, were able to come back and get a local job, and then you kind of left to do bigger and better things. Was your interest in the job of the Johnson City city manager, fueled at all by a desire to come back?
It was. For me, there is no greater impact than being able to make a difference in the place that I grew up in. I consider it an honor to be able to come back and be in a place that was so special to me when I was young. I got my ears pierced downtown at the Penny's building. At the time I grew up, going downtown was just a really big deal. It was like the kind of thing you got dressed up for. And so to be able to come back and to not directly be in the middle of what had happened to downtown during its decline, but to be able to see the investment the community was making in downtown and to be able to be a part of bringing that back with the special memories that I had for downtown Johnson City, I just felt like it was a great honor to be able to come back to this area.
And how does it feel to be back? You've been on the job a year and a half?
Close.
How does it feel?
It feels great. I will tell you the biggest reward is the people. What I remember of the culture of the people being warm, accepting, kind, generous, loyal, all of those things come back to me and remind me of the person that I am today, of all of those characteristics of taking care of people, being committed to a community and knowing what community feels like, civility. All of those memories come back to me that I remember from my youth and from what made me who I am today.
I think there's a lot of confusion out there with the public because you came to this job from Asheville, and there's all that concern of, oh, don't turn Johnson City into Asheville, that's with every city. Irwin's having their "we don't want to be little Asheville" moment right now. I feel like all the surrounding towns have that. What do you want to tell people who are worried that you want Johnson City to be Asheville? So
one of the unique things I think that can be confusing, and I understand why it is that as a community leader, as a city manager, you take what the community wants to be, and you help to build that community. So it isn't so much professionally. I know good practices. I know good engineering practices, I know how to treat people, but the whole thing of being a city manager is our profession says that we allow the community to be who it is. So we look to the community and say, what are you? What do you want to be? What do you want to look like? What's important? What are the values? And then you help develop the community in that way. I will tell you, I don't think I had the power to create Asheville the way that it was. So for people who think Asheville is the way it is because I work there, that would definitely not be true. But the goal here is to say what is important to Johnson City. And what I'm finding out is that there are just core values here that regardless of what happens with growth, we want to maintain. And the things that I think have been reinforced with me around that in terms of things I believed when I grew up was about being kind to people, being a community where people felt like people belong, being a community that is always willing to help other people. All of those things I've found to be true. And so my job is to really understand through growth, through changes that are inevitable and are going to happen, how do we still retain the character of Johnson City that people still feel like this is their home and this is where they belong. I think there have been communities that have lost that touch with who they really are and who they want to be, to the point that local people don't feel like they belong. So my goal is to talk to folks, always understand what we want to retain, and then to be able to build the community based on those qualities, those standards, those values.
And do you feel like being from this area has helped you at all in getting that insight into what this community wants to be?
It definitely has. I mean, when I say that it's reinforced what I grew up with, in terms of family values, in terms of honesty, integrity, being authentic, doing work that's meaningful. I think it's reinforced what I recall in my childhood and where I feel comfortable, where I feel like I'm really doing what I know is right and is what's real inside me versus something that I feel like I have to do. It comes very easy for me to be in this space, in this place, because it does feel like it's who I am.
And it's home.
And it's home.